You weren't supposed to grow up that fast. While others learned how to play, you were learning how to survive. You stopped believing in magic the day you realized no one was coming to save you. And since then, you've been carrying the weight of the world in silence, pretending it's just maturity, when really it's exhaustion wearing wisdom as a mask. You learned to carry too much too early. Before you even knew what responsibility meant, you were already holding pieces of everyone else's chaos. Their anger, their silence, their fears. You became the one who understood too much for your age, the one who smiled when things were falling apart, the one who listened when no one listened to you. Maybe it started in small ways, remembering things your parents forgot, calming someone down when you were the one who needed comfort, pretending to be fine so others wouldn't worry. But slowly it became a habit. You learned that peace only existed when you held everything together. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't live in the body but in the soul, the kind that comes from being emotionally awake in a world that kept asking you to sleep. You became the quiet observer, the child who felt too responsible, the adult who feels too tired. You look around now and see people your age laughing easily, still soft, still curious, and part of you wonders, how did they keep their light? Because yours dimmed while you were busy being the strong one. You didn't lose your youth, it was spent protecting others from their storms. You call it being mature, but deep down, you know it was survival. Maturity sounds noble, survival feels lonely. You didn't grow wiser because you chose to, you grew wiser because life didn't give you another option. People tell you that you're so composed, so calm, so emotionally stable. They mean it as a compliment, but you know better. They don't see the stillness that comes from exhaustion. They don't see the discipline that was once fear. Fear of making a mistake, fear of losing control, fear of being too much or not enough. It's strange, isn't it? How people mistake your silence for peace, your patience for strength, your detachment for wisdom. They admire your ability to stay calm while the world burns, but they don't realize you learned that skill because you once lived in a house that was always on fire. You were the emotional firefighter, the one who put out everyone else's flames. But no one taught you what to do once the fire was gone. No one told you how to rest. Sometimes you catch yourself apologizing for things that aren't your fault. That's the residue of early responsibility, the belief that you are somehow to blame for everything that goes wrong. It's the ghost of the child who thought, if I can fix it, maybe they'll stop fighting. If I'm perfect, maybe they'll love me more. If I disappear, maybe everything will finally be quiet. You didn't grow up with freedom, you grew up with tension. Every smile was a negotiation, every silence a way to keep the peace. That's how a child becomes older than their age, not through time but through vigilance. You became hyper-aware, always scanning the room for danger, sensing moods, predicting outcomes. It made you intuitive, empathetic, even wise, but it also made you tired. Deeply tired. Because while everyone else was learning how to live, you were learning how not to collapse. You wear your self-control like armor now. It keeps you safe, but it also keeps love at a distance. Because control is easier than vulnerability, and safety feels more realistic than joy. Sometimes you meet people who remind you of the softness you lost. They laugh too loud, they trust too easily, they still believe in simple things. And for a moment, you feel something crack open inside you, a kind of grief mixed with envy. You don't want to take their light, you just wish you still had yours. And maybe, somewhere deep down, you do. It's just buried under years of holding everything together. You've mistaken endurance for strength and independence for peace. But they're not the same. You don't have to keep being the strong one. You just forgot what it feels like to be held. You grew up believing that love had to be earned. That to deserve care, you first had to prove your usefulness. So you learned to fix, to help, to anticipate every need before anyone even asked. It made you reliable, indispensable even, but it also made you invisible. Because when you're always the one holding everything together, no one thinks to ask who's holding you. Your competence became your camouflage. People admired how you never seemed to fall apart, unaware that you simply learned how to collapse quietly behind closed doors. You measure safety not by joy, but by control. When life feels predictable, you breathe easier. Uncertainty feels dangerous, spontaneity feels reckless. You call it being organized, but sometimes it's just fear disguised as order. There are nights when your mind won't turn off. You replay every conversation, every mistake, every possibility. You analyze yourself until the edges blur. Was I too cold, too soft, too much, not enough? It's an endless loop of accountability, where you take responsibility even for the things you couldn't change. You became the parent to your own emotions, the therapist to your own pain. You learned to self-soothe because no one else knew how. You learned to downplay your needs because they always seemed inconvenient. So now, when someone asks what you need, you hesitate, because you genuinely don't know anymore. It's not that you dislike comfort, it's that comfort feels unfamiliar. Rest feels guilty. Peace feels suspicious. Happiness feels temporary, like a guest that won't stay long. You've carried chaos for so long that calm feels unnatural. Your nervous system waits for the next alarm even when the world is finally quiet. That's the cost of growing up too soon. You never learned what it means to simply exist without preparing for impact. You call it being independent, but sometimes it's just isolation with better branding. Because independence born from survival isn't freedom, it's armor. And armor can keep you safe, but it also keeps out everything that could heal you. You tell yourself you're fine because it's easier than explaining the exhaustion. You minimize your own pain because you know others have it worse. You've become fluent in the language of self-dismissal. I'm fine. It's not that bad. It doesn't matter. But it does matter. You matter. The world trained you to believe that strength is silence. That vulnerability is weakness. That asking for help is failure. But strength isn't the absence of need, it's the courage to admit that you have them. You're not broken because you struggle to rest. You're human. You've been living in survival mode for so long that peace feels like a foreign language. And learning peace after chaos is like learning to walk again. Slow, shaky, and brave. Sometimes, when you look at old photos of yourself, you don't recognize the child staring back. There's innocence there that feels almost fictional. But that child is still you, the part of you that deserved softness, laughter, and safety. They never disappeared, they just went quiet, waiting for permission to come home. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. You don't have to keep proving your worth through endurance. You deserve a life that doesn't require constant recovery. You deserve to exhale without guilt. Maybe healing isn't about becoming someone new. Maybe it's about returning to the version of you that existed before the world told you to grow up so fast. The one who laughed without checking if it was appropriate. The one who believed rest was safe. The one who didn't confuse calm with danger. You've spent years living with your feelings turned down to a whisper. It wasn't a choice, it was protection. When emotions became too loud, you learned to mute them to keep everything contained behind the calm expression everyone praised you for. Anger felt dangerous. Sadness felt inconvenient. Joy felt too fragile to trust. So you began to live in the middle, not too high, not too low. Safe there in the gray. Predictable. Controlled. But safety isn't the same as peace. It's just silence with walls around it. There's a difference between not hurting and truly healing. You've mastered the art of not hurting. You function, you smile, you do what's expected, but part of you knows you haven't really exhaled in years. Sometimes, a song, a smell, or a quiet moment catches you off guard and something cracks. Tears come out of nowhere. Not from current pain, but from stored pain, the kind that never found a place to go. That's the body remembering what the mind tried to forget. You tell yourself, I shouldn't feel this way. But feelings don't follow logic, they follow memory. Every time you swallowed your sadness, it stayed. Every time you said, I'm fine, it waited. And now those emotions knock softly from inside, asking, is it safe to come out yet? Healing doesn't start with joy. It starts with permission. Permission to feel what you never got to feel when you needed it most. You can't rush that process. You can only create the conditions where it's finally safe to feel again. That's the paradox of the strong ones. The world sees discipline, but inside there's longing, a quiet craving for softness, for someone who says, you can rest now. The hardest thing for you isn't responsibility, it's surrender. You've spent so long holding the world together that the idea of letting someone hold you feels foreign, even threatening. You equate vulnerability with danger because once it was. To you, being open meant being exposed, needing meant being neglected. So you built independence like a fortress, brick by brick, until even love had to knock. But love doesn't want to invade, it wants to enter. And for that, you'll have to open the door from the inside. Sometimes you catch yourself sabotaging good things, pulling away just when someone gets close. It's not that you don't want closeness, it's that closeness reminds you of all the times it wasn't safe. You want to trust, but your nervous system still flinches at gentleness. You crave connection, but you fear dependence. You want intimacy, but you fear being seen. You long for freedom, but you also long to be cared for. It's a constant tug of war between the adult who says, I'm fine alone, and the inner child who whispers, please don't leave me again. And maybe that's what healing really is, not eliminating the contradictions but learning to let them coexist. To hold both truths at once, that you are self-sufficient and deserving of care, that you can be strong and still need softness. The child inside you doesn't need you to be perfect. They just need you to stop being the parent and start being the protector. Not from others this time, but for yourself. You can start small. Notice when you shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Notice when you say yes but mean no. Notice when you feel tension in your chest every time you try to rest. That's your body saying, it's okay to stop performing now. Healing isn't dramatic. It's subtle. It's learning to eat slowly without guilt. It's sitting in silence without panic. It's smiling because you mean it, not because you're supposed to. You spent your childhood becoming older than your age. Now, as an adult, healing will mean becoming younger again, not childish but free. Because you don't need to earn the right to rest. You were born with it. There comes a moment in every exhausted soul when survival is no longer enough. You start to notice how small your world has become, how every decision is filtered through fear, through habit, through a silent question. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? But somewhere beneath that constant caution, another voice whispers, what if you're finally safe now? What if you don't have to keep proving yourself anymore? At first, you don't trust that voice. It feels naive. You've lived too long inside vigilance to believe in safety. Peace feels suspicious, like the calm before another storm. So when life starts to soften, you flinch. When someone offers kindness, you analyze it. When you feel joy, you brace for the moment it disappears. Healing starts here, in the discomfort of ease. It's learning that not every silence is danger. That not every calm moment is a trap. That sometimes quiet is just quiet. You start to rebuild slowly, like someone learning to walk after years of crawling through fire. Your body doesn't trust peace yet. It trembles when nothing goes wrong. But you keep breathing anyway. You let the stillness stay a little longer each time. There's no manual for this kind of recovery. You won't wake up one day and suddenly feel whole. It's more like remembering, piece by piece, what safety feels like, not in your head but in your body. Safety isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of gentleness. It's knowing you can cry without punishment. It's knowing you can rest without falling behind. It's knowing that you can say no and still be loved. And so you begin to test this new truth. You stop saying yes automatically. You start telling people when you're tired, when you're scared, when you need space. It feels awkward at first, like speaking a language you once knew but forgot how to pronounce. But each honest word becomes a small act of rebellion against your old self. You used to equate control with safety. Now you're starting to realize that safety is actually found in trust, in allowing life to move without needing to grip it so tightly. That's where softness lives, in the spaces you once called weakness. There's a certain beauty in beginning again. It's fragile, yes, but real. You begin to find wonder in ordinary things. The taste of morning air, the sound of laughter, the warmth of sunlight on your skin. You notice that life doesn't always need to be managed. Sometimes it just wants to be experienced. You start to forgive yourself for all the years you spent in survival. For the boundaries you didn't set because you were too afraid to lose people. For the emotions you buried because no one could hold them with you. For the times you mistook exhaustion for strength. You realize that healing isn't a straight path, it's a spiral. You'll revisit old wounds from new levels of awareness. You'll still get tired. You'll still doubt. But now you won't abandon yourself when it happens. You'll stay. You'll listen. You'll breathe. The child inside you, the one who grew up too fast, starts to wake up slowly. They blink in confusion. The world looks softer now. You let them laugh without explaining why. You let them cry without shame. You let them play without purpose. That's what reconstruction looks like. Not grand, not perfect, just alive. It's giving yourself permission to be human again, not a machine built from resilience. To be warm, messy, inconsistent, curious. To let life touch you instead of managing how it's allowed to reach you. And one day, almost without realizing it, you'll find yourself smiling for no reason at all. Not because you achieved something, not because you earned rest, but because, for once, existing feels enough. That's when you'll know you've begun to live again. Not survive. What? You've spent most of your life trying to be enough for everyone else. But the truth is, you were never meant to carry that much. You were supposed to be held, not tested. To grow slowly, not to be rushed into adulthood by chaos and circumstance. And yet, here you are, still standing, still trying, still searching for softness in a world that rewarded your strength but ignored your exhaustion. That alone makes you extraordinary. Because despite everything, a part of you still believes in healing. A part of you still believes there's more to life than endurance. Maybe that's what wisdom really is, not knowing everything but choosing to stay open after you've seen how much it can hurt. You've seen the worst sides of love, yet you still want to love deeply. You've been disappointed by people, yet you still want to understand them. You've been exhausted by life, yet you still want to live. That's courage. That's humanity. The world told you to be the strong one, and you listened. But strength doesn't always look like silence or control. Sometimes it looks like tears you finally let fall. Sometimes it sounds like asking for help without shame. Sometimes it feels like lying still on a quiet afternoon, doing nothing and realizing you're safe. You don't have to fix yourself. You were never broken, only burdened. And the parts of you that once felt too much are the same parts that make you capable of loving so deeply now. That's the hidden gift of early responsibility. It taught you empathy before experience, compassion before understanding. But now, it's time to use that gift differently, not to carry others but to care for yourself with the same devotion you once gave away. Let yourself become soft again. Let laughter sound louder than worry. Let your shoulders drop. Let the world see you as you are, not the version that performs but the one that breathes. The next chapter of your life won't be about surviving. It will be about living gently. It will be about learning to trust peace, to build slow mornings, to choose people who feel like home instead of projects to repair. And when that voice inside says, "You haven't done enough," you'll answer, "I've done enough just by being here." Because being here, after everything, is proof that you've already won. You've already broken the cycle. You've already become the person the younger you needed most. So breathe. You made it. And now the story of your healing begins. If these words found you, it's because you needed the reminder. You are not behind. You are not broken. You're just healing from years of carrying too much. Stay here. Let's walk this path together, slowly, gently, one truth at a time. Subscribe and let every new story be a mirror that helps you remember who you are becoming.